The book is called 55, and basically it's a fun, humorous read. There is a message behind it as well, which I'll just go into. But essentially the reason why I named it 55 was the lead protagonist in the book is a Sikh boy growing up in Delhi in the mid-90s. You know, your typical spoiled South Delhi public school, prestigious college type bubble chap. And he, feels he's on a path to get into the best college in Delhi University called St. Sebastian's in the book. And what happens is he gets a 55 in his English board exam. Now, English, as we know, is a subject that must be included in all, whenever you're applying to any college, it gets included in your aggregate percentage. And that changes his life, because what happens is instead of ending up in St. Sebastian's, he ends up in what he believes to be a second-rate college. And clearly, the book is about his journey of how he realizes that perhaps it's his worldview that is stunted and not the college and the people that he's calling out and so on. Interesting question. So, the book is complete fiction, clearly. However, I grew up in Delhi and I went to Delhi University, and there were lots of characters that I came across during my journey through Delhi University. So what I've taken is I've taken about 100 people I met and different kind of characteristics that I observed. And just sort of, combine them to form various characters within the book. So there are scenes, that are based on things that I've observed, but clearly complete fiction. There is, as with most stories, I think there is an arc. It sort of begins with, we set up the character, you'll see him, I almost want you to think, be a little bit kind of, shall we say, offended by some of his opinions and his worldview, especially. He is a spoiled brat, your typical kind of trappings of, I guess, some amount of wealth and some opinions which I guess are politically correct, but definitely not, shall we say, sophisticated. But then you see over the course of the book, he falls in love with a girl who kind of changes his opinion somewhat. He realizes, what he's sort of, the way he's coming across to the rest of the world is perhaps not appropriate. And so he goes through that entire growth. It's a coming-of-age story. So he goes through that growth that most of us have been through in our kind of younger years, and comes out of it, I think, a slightly better person. When I was growing up in the mid-90s, India was a very different place. I mean, I think Manmohan Singh had just opened up the economy. There were lots of new brands and so on. But I think we were still a distance away from being a brick country. We weren't completely shining at that point, and a fair few from my generation couldn't wait to leave. Those who had the opportunity left the country to study abroad and so on. And Arjun Singh, the protagonist of 55, is one of those individuals. So at the end of the book, he's kind of going through that journey, and whether he leaves or not, I'll kind of leave to suspense. But also there's a very deep love story in the book. He falls in love with a girl who changes him and makes him realize that he needs to grow up. So another thing that kind of gets resolved or not, you'll see in the book, is what happens. Does his love story kind of come to a fruitful end or not? Hopefully you'll find out. So clearly, the other main lead character, I suppose, is the girl in the book. Her name is Radha. Interesting, young, clearly emancipated woman. Again, we're in the mid-90s in Delhi, so keep that in perspective. She has very interesting opinions. She's all about, she's a career-focused girl, and she's very strong opinions and so on, and a little bit older than him. Almost makes him kind of, realize that he's not grown up. He's sort of spoiled and has this, kind of daddy and mommy's boy thing going on. So makes him come out of it. But at the same time, she is quite traditional. And I use that word traditional a little bit kind of with caution, because she feels that she wants to have an arranged marriage. So she sort of just does not entertain the notion of well, his advances are completely kind of spurned, if you will. So I think she's quite an interesting, complex character. But in addition to that, he has certain friends. Again, there's one guy who is, his name in the book is Gaurav Pandit. He's one of the strong kind of characters in the book. He is he's almost an environmentalist, but has very differing views to him. So this guy is, kind of living in his bubble, whereas Gaurav is all about breaking out of that South Delhi bubble almost, and going and exploring college and meeting new people and having new experiences. Even in physical appearance, he has a ponytail, he has 6 earrings. So there's kind of that almost that contrast between Arjun's character in the book, very kind of straightforward and all about brands and so on, and you have Gaurav, who again helps him come out of that a little bit, makes him realize, look, there's a lot more to the world. There are a couple of other characters, with smaller parts to play, who are quite interesting as well, and hopefully you'll find them as interesting as I found them. There are a few other female characters in the book, but again, nobody who has as strong a role to play as Radha. There's the guy's parents and so on, and there's obviously the mother and things. But there are other characters that he comes across at university, and I almost think that his view, again, like I said, his view is very shall we say, from a very narrow perspective. And I almost wanted to bring that out because there is this still, I think, there is this class of people who are, South Delhi, public school, prestigious college bubble, who live in those farmhouse parties. And, I'm forgive me, I'm broad brushing a little bit, clearly. I don't want to be accosted on the street by any of them and be punched. But clearly there is still that class of people who are growing up in that bubble. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and see the world beyond that. It is written in the first person. It's written from Arjun's point of view, and hopefully people will be able to kind of see that and appreciate the humor in that, because some of his opinions are clearly completely out there. They're quite interesting, shall we say. It comes out both in dialogue, when he's interacting with the other characters in the book, and also in narration as well. The book it's quite interesting. When I started writing the book, you asked me this question earlier. So I write on the side. I have a full-time day job, and what I was trying to do initially was write a script. Actually, that's how I began. So this idea was basically I guess what's called the treatment for the script, which evolved into the book. I just felt I had a lot more to say, so let's begin with the book. And one day when I have the time and talent, I suppose, I will adapt this into a script. So it's very visual. So there's, even though there is narration, you'll be able to kind of picture the scenes very categorically, very specifically. It's very much, a lot of people who've read it have said it's like watching a film, an interesting film, I hope. But it is, throughout the book, there's humor. It's a light, fun read. I hope you enjoy reading it. It's meant to be taken in a light sense, but like I said, there is that message behind it. Very interesting, very interesting question. The book, interesting, for various reasons, I guess these days, is being classified in the genre of campus humor and campus kind of novels. The lead character, like I said, is from South Delhi, one of those typical kind of, carpool going to college type brats. Spends very little time in college. So there is, towards the beginning, there is a fair amount of description of college life, but it's far wider than that. Delhi, I'd like to think, almost plays the role of a character in the book. It's in the background. You always have this, why does this guy think the way he does? Well, his opinions are being shaped by the environment around him. So Delhi is a kind of, like I said, almost like a character in the book. It kind of, I describe places, I describe events very visually. And I hope that comes across. For example, the book begins with him visiting I guess what's called in the book, the Central Education Board office. And I describe that in a fair amount of visual detail. A government office in the mid-90s in Delhi, what that would be like, how the peons and the clerks in that office would behave. So you will see that at different points in the book. I describe things quite visually. I could almost pay you for setting me up with that question, because in the book again, Arjun feels that he's figured it out. He's figured it all out. He classifies Radha as X, Y, Z, and this is what she's like. This is what she's thinking. And every time he thinks, now this time I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get through the barrier. I'm currently in the friend zone. I'm a couple of years younger than her. She's clearly mature. She's working. I feel that I'm learning and I've grown, and I'm sure I'm going to get through it this time. Has that conversation or makes that advance, so to speak, only to be batted back very strongly. So no, I don't think he figures that out till the end. He thinks he's got her, quite well kind of slotted, but absolutely not. I think that is a journey that, I've been married now for 10 years, and my wife will sort of agree that that's something I'm still figuring out as well, to be fair. The interesting thing about this book, I think, which is quite different is, there's obviously the usual humor, and people will enjoy it. It's visual. We've talked about all that. But what is different is it is written from the point of view of a Sikh protagonist, a young 19, 20-year-old Sikh boy. And there are very definite things that go through their minds when they are growing up. There's coming to terms with the turban, which in itself is something that people don't really realize how interesting, how sometimes difficult that can be. And so there's a fair bit of that in the book, and you'll see that come across because he's going through the journey of starting to tie the turban. What that involves. You probably when you were younger woke up in the morning, quick shower, 10 minutes, you're ready, let's go. We're off to college. He wakes up 2 hours before because he needs to get his turban sorted. It needs to be tied. You have to make sure that the turban, you have to be completely dressed with your sweater and your jumper on before you tie the turban, because guess what? Once you've tied it, try getting a thin sweater. So people don't really, thin sweater through it rather. So people don't really realize all that. And that's something I think that's quite different and quite interesting about this book, because I don't think that's been covered. I mean, it has been covered in, in a few books that I've come across, but not to the level of detail that I have, certainly. And again, there's a bit of a humorous perspective on that. What he feels when he goes to, for example, a club. You find it perhaps quite loud, but guess what? He's got some soundproofing. He's fine. So things like that. I've brought that out, and that's something that I think is quite interesting and quite different about the book. The Sikh community has this sort of, should we say, this reputation for laughing at themselves and being quite vibrant and quite open-minded, and I hope they really enjoy it.